Well, welcome to the May 30th edition of Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play. With a few exceptions, when we run into the likeness of Ida B. Wells and Fannie Lou Hamer, such as the person sitting to my immediate left, my co-host for this evening, Noreen Mc Clendon. Welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Thanks for having me.
It's all about saving our cities, and Noreen did me the pleasure a couple of weeks ago of calling into the show, and she made a commitment that she stood up to by making a personal appearance today as we delve even deeper into models of possibility and best practices. So as we look at saving our cities, it starts with saving ourselves. And the work that you continue to put in, sister, is part of the blueprint, in my estimation. How do you feel about that?
That's pretty nice to hear. It's hard work. I told you 2 weeks ago, there's no secret sauce.
It ain't.
Just hard work. It's hard work.
And ain't that the truth, you know? And on the phone, we have a brother that I met a little over 5 years ago in, of all places, Manchester, Tennessee, at a music festival called Bonnaroo. It's one of the largest music festivals in the world. And our common connection to being there, because he drove down from Memphis and I drove in from Murfreesboro after flying into Nashville, because we shared a common friend by the name of William Bootsy Collins, who also had a common connection, a brother by the name of Dana Davis, who at the time was the vice president of basketball operations for the Memphis Grizzlies. So, welcome, Randy Wade, to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. How you doing, man?
Man, absolutely fantabulous.
Fantabulous. That's some of that Memphis stuff. Man, it's such a great thing to know that we had a chance meeting. It'll be 5 years actually in June when they had that Bonnaroo thing, and you were there with Randy Wade and David Porter, the great song stylist for Stax Records. And boy, it was hotter than Little Sister out there that day.
Oh, wow, man. They had the water sprays and all of that.
They needed it, man. It was smoking. It was smoking hot. But the beauty of it was that was our first interaction, and it has led to a big brother, little brother relationship some 5 years later. And the work that we are going to do is a reflection of what you've spent most of your life doing. I'm going to take just a moment and kind of fill my audience in on who you are. Randy Wade is from Memphis, Tennessee, born and raised, decorated Vietnam veteran, worked for the Shelby County Sheriff's Department for a number of years, and then he became the go-to guy for the Congressman Randy Cohen. You were the director of
Steve Cohen.
Steve Cohen. And you were in what capacity with him?
The district director.
The district director. So he went from the outhouse to the White House. Randy Wade.
Put it that way.
But see, the beauty of Randy Wade is I've been in his office when he was working for Steve Cohen, and there was never an idle moment. The phone was either ringing or he was actually meeting with the constituents of the district in such a way that it moved me, because he would go that extra mile, because he was already sensitive to the plight of our people, and more importantly, he knew that the seat that he sat in, it was critical that he, be an advocate for his folks. And I mean, and then we would go out into the city, and everywhere he went, everybody knew who he was, and they always had something they needed him to do, and I never seen him turn anybody down. And I want to introduce you, Randy, to a sister that's cut out of that same cloth. She's sitting in with me today. Her name is Noreen Mc Clendon.
How you doing, Miss Noreen Mc Clendon?
Mc Clendon, and I'm doing just great.
Clendon. All right, great.
Pleasure to meet you.
I was just wondering who was Bobby talking about.
Well, you're too busy being about it, really, to even take time to know that you've left those kind of tracks, And before the show started, Noreen and I was talking about the fact that the show is centered around models of possibility and best practices. And the aim of this show is to share with the listening audience real people doing real things. And I know the work and history of both of you people, and that's why I asked you to set in on this session, because we're talking about saving our cities. And Memphis has become a second home to me because he rolls out the red carpet every time I go down
Always,
there.
always.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we still got some unfinished business that we're gonna complete because it's about momentum. And
Yes.
kind of give them a little backdrop on what's going on in Memphis and what you see as the way forward to saving our cities.
Yeah. Well, I want to say to you and your guest, Bobby, I have a deep concern as to what is really going on in Memphis. We, when I said we, me and along with several other Memphians, back in 1992, we filed a lawsuit that dealt with runoff elections, okay? And we thought that runoff elections, and they were unconstitutional, meaning that you have to vote twice in order to win rather than a majority win. But anyway, we won that lawsuit, and then as a result of us winning that lawsuit, we got the majority of African Americans on the council, the school board, all the local representatives because of that. And that vote, we have 13 members on the council and I think 13 on the county commission, 7 African Americans. And when you go back to 92, Bobby, and you look at where we were then, I really don't see much change. I really don't. And the reason for that is, I think that once we got the numbers, some of our African Americans teamed up with Republicans. And so as a result of that, the issues when it relates to our communities, we can very seldom get anything done. For example, we're 500 police officers short. When police officers serve our communities, where it requires 4 cars, in a high crime area, there's only 2 cars. But when you go to out east, where there's less crime and more whites live, it's not a racial issue, but it's a fact. We have to speak truth to power. They have 4 cars to 5 cars and a low crime area. Those are the kinds of issues right now we're getting ready to prepare ourselves to deal with in the city of Memphis. We are a town well over 74% African American, and we control the politics. But now, just recently, after A.C. Warden, you met him, Bobby.
Right. The former mayor.
He lost the election to a young white lawyer named Jim Strickland, all right? Well, in my opinion, Doc doesn't know anything as it relates to our community. But what hurts me is, being that we are the majority, then we go down and ask for 10% set aside. Can you believe that, young lady? We are the majority. We are not a minority. And on my talk show, Bob, you've been on it before, I try to get the mindset. You have to change the mindset. We are sleeping giants that don't even know it. Here we are asking for 10% set aside with a majority of African Americans. And we get less. The commercial appeal, the local paper here, last 2 months ago, stated to the effect that we get less than 0.5%, Bobby, of the contracts. And the mayor doesn't have to have the governing body as the council or commission to sign contracts with a stroke of the pen. It makes no sense.
Well, you know, Wendell, I called you Wendell because you've talked to Wendell Stimley, the president of the National Association of Minority Contractors, on a number of occasions. I want Noreen to chime in for the following reason. It's not about what she speculates, it's about what she's done. If you would kind of share with Brother Randy some of the things that you're doing in the city of Los Angeles and why it would be wise for the people in Memphis who want to fix some problems to ask this sister at some point to come in and consult on how you put our people in a better situation to survive and thrive economically and socially.
Right.
I took over Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles from when my mother passed away in 2004. Okay. She was the first executive director. My mother's business model was to create an economy that didn't depend on the government to give us anything. So I am a proponent of starting our own companies. If you have a 74% majority in Memphis, there have to be people that are qualified. If they're not qualified, the task should be getting companies qualified to do this work, so that they can't be denied. In addition to that, creating opportunities within our own community that doesn't rely on someone from outside of our community to give us or set aside anything for us. That's where I find us having the biggest problem, is we're still looking to those people who make it and are benefit from our oppression to relieve us from the oppression.
Yeah, I agree totally with you, but there's one situation that really bothers me. The dynamics of the political spectrum here, it's in our favor. That it's not anything hard to do. But what has happened is our folk are very inactive. Sometimes it reminds me of Soweto in South Africa. It really does. I mean, that's a sad commentary, but it's true. It makes not saying now if you elect a black that a black gonna do something for you. That doesn't work that way. All right. But when you control the government, when you control the politics in any town, you follow me. As long as you don't marry to the millionaires and billionaires, you will be fine. And you can create those opportunities because there's so many things out there that is basically ours. I mean, we have to be some type of recipient as it relates to the windfalls of tax profits that come to the city and the state.
Well, you know,
I mean, I'm sorry, Bob.
No, I apologize. Go ahead.
No. See, we can't allow a certain segment to get all the monies in their neighborhood when we are that majority. It's upon us, and you're right, it's upon us to deal with those issues, but we're not, our leadership, we're lacking leadership.
And the reason...
this message.
The reason we lack leadership is we were trained out of leadership.
True.
We were trained out of it. We were lulled to sleep by all kinds of things: drugs, women, fast cars, bling. We were lulled to sleep. Memphis is a great music town. The music industry is adamant that you will not produce conscious music in the music industry. I know artists that are conscious artists that are great, that sign deals and have been shelved because they have been told, if you're not spreading poison, then we will not promote your music. It's just that simple. There are lots of things that go against our folks coming together. We have been programmed not to trust each other.
Well, part of the solution is this conversation that we're having in real time right now. And let's use as a best practice what Herr Trump is doing right now. He's creating back channels. Okay, so the purpose of this conversation is we're going to create our own back channel, and where there's deficiencies, we will reinforce those deficiencies by bringing in people from wherever that know how to get the job done. And I'm very serious about that, Randy. What this sister has been able to do here in Los Angeles is duplicatable. And for example, tell them about the marketplace that you guys put together.
So it took 25 years, Randy, of constantly saying yes when those powers that be said no. Putting together a team of people, we went and partnered with the largest developer of grocery store anchored shopping centers in the United States. They helped us to put together the deal, helped us to find the tenants, and that made it a deal that those powers that be in the political forces couldn't deny.
I got you.
Right, and we retain an ownership interest in that center. It's thriving. The beauty is that as long as it took, Satan meant something for bad, but it was for good because it became a better center in the time that it was delayed, because our area became an emerging market, if you will. We have always been there, but all of a sudden we became an emerging market that companies were willing to locate into. And so we put together a shopping center. It's got a CVS drugstore, Panda Express, dentist office, Fatburger, Starbucks, Little Caesars, Yogurtland,
Wow,
nail shop,
right
Chase
on.
Bank,
What?
Wingstop, I think it's a 35,000 square foot supermarket, a regional market. And so the shopping center does much better than anybody ever anticipated because it's oversubscribed because the need was so great. But we put this team together and we just kept fighting. Every time there was a no, we just kept saying, but yes. And it has to, that's why I tell Bobby, there's no secret sauce. It's just hard work. There is no other way to do it. We just got to outwork them. And we have to train each other to trust each other and go ahead and make it happen. It's one of the reasons I love LeBron James. LeBron's team.
Oh, most definitely.
LeBron's team is his team, is his folks. Right? He went from high school into the NBA, and his folks make the money off of him.
There you go.
That's the kind of example that I love.
Well, you know, a minute ago I mentioned David Banner. I played some of his music at the intro. Same kind of dude, same mentality. And there are people in Memphis like that. And they just don't know that they got help on the way. And that's why I decided to bring you on the show tonight, Randy. Help is on the way. Because when I go to Memphis, there are several people that will respond favorably to any initiative that Randy puts on the table. We just hadn't had all the pieces yet. And we 5 years in, so after her saying it took 25, I can't really complain, man.
You're really right, but that's encouraging. But she's exactly right, Bobby, because there is, next time you come here, and I really apologize because, Bobby, we have a shopping center that was basically given to us. Now listen to this. It's right there on the corner of Elvis Presley Boulevard.
That's the heart of the community. Yeah.
So anyway, when we started the program trying to get grant money to renovate it, and all we needed, according to the budget, was right about $3 billion. And we couldn't get the grant money from the city. But however, the city took the old Sears Towers, which is out in Midtown, one of the white council members' district, and gave them $35 million to renovate that. And see, and this is what I want to say to you. Because those are issues, along with what you're saying, you are so on point. But if we can get just a handful, Bobby, when you come back in, I want to walk you through that shopping center and show you what we got. So I told the owners, it's an African-American female and male own the center. Whatever you do, don't sell, sit on that property.
Whatever you do, if you have to cut off your left arm first, do not sell. Let me tell you this, to save our cities, what we have to do all across the country is own. If it takes 15 families to piece together to buy a piece of property, that's what we need to be doing. Gentrification cannot gentrify you out if you own.
True.
It cannot. And listen, the thing of it is with commercial property, if you have a prime location like it sounds like you do, there should be no reason why you can't get tenants in there and be able, because you said $3 million is what you needed to renovate it? $3 million?
And I told her,
you can't even get.
I'm gonna roll my eyes. I'm gonna roll my eyes and tell you this: I could sell chicken dinners for that much. Listen, we could do a fish fry. We get for $3 million for real.
Right. It goes back to what you said earlier, and I appreciate that. We have to do our own. Don't wait on those folks. And then one other factor I left out, and it sits right off a half mile, a quarter of a mile, from I-55. The transportation is there. The interstate is there, Bobby.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Have you been to Memphis?
Never been to Memphis, but all I can tell you is if it has the location, because everything about real estate is location.
They got the location.
There's no way in the world that there isn't some commercial bank that would loan you $3 million to renovate the center. All you got to do is have the right tenant mix and package it. It's not that difficult.
You're on point. And I've told the committee, Bobby, when you come back in, we'll talk. We'll address the group. You can't get it here in Memphis. Go outside of Memphis.
Oh, yeah.
You got a great package. You got the tax. It would say Everest President Boulevard. Come on, you on the corner.
Right.
Oh, and then the next building close to you is a Kroger grocery store.
Oh,
You're
wow.
right there in the IHOP across the street.
Mm-hmm.
You got the innocent. Lord have mercy. With the lottery.
I agree. It's the lottery, for real. Tell her whatever she does, do not sell. Whatever you do, do not.
sell.
No, under no circumstances.
Well, here's what we're going to do, Randy. I'm going to get you to get Noreen and that sister on the phone. All right, because that's a conversation they need to have. I would have done my job by facilitating that conversation.
Right, we need.
And then we'll fill in the rest of it, after they come to some kind of understanding. Because it's time to go to work, man. We got people that have told us they were going to do stuff, and we still sitting there waiting for it to rain, and
yeah, but
that gig's up.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's another story, Bobby, but in this project here, it will work. They just need guidance, and that's basically what it is. And for the leadership, that is a no. We just don't have the leadership. But I'm looking for like your guest there, fresh minds. All right, creativity, Bobby. You have to. If we continue to go down the road that Memphis is going in our community, we're going to go by the way of the dinosaur, man. We just going to fade away.
No, it's going to take a lot longer than it did to get rid of the dinosaurs, because we are the contributing factor now. I did a study last year that I shared with you, and that's why Memphis is one of the 5 cities that this initiative is concentrating on right out the gate. And it has everything to do with the murder rate. Because you associate the murder rate with poverty, because poverty is a serial killer. So what do you offset poverty with but economic change? That's the only thing that remedies that situation, because the value of everything goes up when there's prosperity, including human life. And if you would, please, give our audience a picture of how desperate the situation has become when it comes to crime and homicides in the city of Memphis.
Right, Bobby, I think not just months ago, we were number 3 in murder rates, and also one of the most dangerous cities in the United States, Memphis. Right, every day every night there's a shooting, there's a murder, or it's a carjacking. It hurts me so bad, and you're talking of ranges between the ages of 15 to 25. The prisons, the county jail is over flooding, man. Young folks are being remanded from juvenile court just like never before for ages 14, 15, 16 years old as adults. And it's only going to get worse because thanks to Trump and what's that crook up there, Jeff Sessions, was talking about.
Beauregard, Beauregard.
Beauregard from Alabama. Down there. But anyway, he's talking about doubling down.
Right, exactly.
Tougher sentence. How dumb can you be? And so what's going to happen? You're going to see it get worse before it gets better. We are one click away from the governor calling in the National Guard.
In Memphis?
Listen, we won. I said one click away. We won. That's how bad it is. Yeah.
And this is in a city that you wouldn't see that when you go downtown, right? Just like in all of the major urban areas, they've transformed downtown to probably the safest part of the city. Now, the perimeter around there, that's a whole different situation. But you go down Beale Street, man, you safe as a bear cub.
Oh, got cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
And on my street, they began, Cottonwood over in Parkway Village, they began to put cameras there, which we're thankful. But Bobby, you hit the nail on the head, man. Poverty is a serial killer.
Oh, my goodness.
That's something I told the mayor. Man, that's something you have to deal with. I don't care how many police officers you got. We 500 short. You can get 1,000 more. And if you don't address the issue of poverty, I'm serious, man. It's not gonna work. And education.
Right, because once people are, there's a reason that it was against the law to teach a slave to read.
That's right.
And so
Say
if you got Betsy
Say
DeVos basically trying to kill public education, we're having, them try to kill any access to health care. Everything is a privilege in the United States. There are no rights in the United States under this current administration.
Yeah.
So we have to train our young people. We have to give them hope in themselves.
Yeah.
Currently, they don't think there's any hope. What do they have to look forward to?
But you're so on point. But all that is by design. When you talk about Betsy DeVos, she single-handedly destroyed public education with a charter school, I believe, up in Michigan. But also tied into the Amway family, DeVos. But anyway, and her brother was involved in Blackwater. The point I'm trying to make is, here's a guy that tells you that he's going to drain the swamp. What swamp is he draining?
Ours.
I mean, all I see is he's adding sharks and alligators. All right? Where he is. All right? It's a sad commentary. That's why it's important. The conversation with you and the foreseeability that you have, that we have to adopt that. I know it's right. We got to do self-help now, man.
That's it. And should have been doing it all along, but there's no better time than right now, especially when we've identified low-hanging fruit. And when you got a city that you can make a Tarzan movie in, and it got so many of us, then there's no reason why we can't put the right minds and the like minds together. And that's the critical part of this. There's a lot of people that are very educated, but they can't find their way out of a one-room apartment with an exit sign over the door.
Yeah,
so,
Bobby, I have a question. Excuse me. I have a question for you and your guest.
Sure.
I met with several leaders here. They invited me to come speak, and I was just truly grateful. Black Lives Matter, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they wanted me to do a press release to ask for the removal of the district attorney because she was found guilty by the state Supreme Court of suppressing evidence.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I'm going to deal with that a later date, but not right now. But I told Black Lives Matter and the leadership, I said, let me tell you something. What politicians understand is numbers. Right now, if the needle continues to stay where it is when it relates to voters' registration and voters' turnout, I don't give a doggone what you do or say. It's going to be the same old music. Now, when the needle moves in the favor of we all turn us, black folks turning out, then you begin to see some things happening. That's how Memphis operates. Matter of fact, what's the town up in Missouri? Was it Jefferson County where the kid got killed up there?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
You see, when the politics changed that scenario, it did. It's self-help and controlling the politics. It all goes together.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this segment of the show tonight, Randy, your expertise is invaluable because you know the political landscape and what people like Noreen and Wendell from the National Association of Minority Contractors bring to the table is the ability to put those pieces together and coalesce around the fact that we all have to stay in our respective lanes. As long as we're headed to the same destination, we'll get there a lot faster. All right?
I agree totally.
You have to buy politicians anyway, and they are for sale. And so with that being a fact, we are looking at all of the elements that we have to address. And the thing that's so beautiful about this conversation is action-driven. And I want to thank you, Randy, for spending a few times with me. And you will be hearing from me and Noreen about the next steps.
Indeed.
The next steps.
Please.
Yeah,
right, the next step. I like that, the next step. Guys, I really appreciate it. I'm really, really honored. Bobby, keep doing the good work. And young ladies, you stay the course.
Thank you. And you too.
Right.
We're going to see you sooner than later, Randy.
I got you.
So get that catfish together.
You know it, Bobby. You always got a place in my house. Okay? Even if you have to sleep on the couch.
He's a fishing fool now.
Good. Yeah. Somebody got to do that.
Okay, Randy, man. Love you, brother. I'll talk to you soon, man. All right. We'll be right back. Oh, y'all, I know that y'all was wondering if y'all was on the right station or not, because that said Southern Soul. Brother passed away a couple of days ago, Greg Allman from the Allman Brothers. He was actually born in Nashville, Tennessee. And had to give him credit, boy. The Allman Brothers put it down, you know. And it's a little more familiar to us country folks, but, you know, when you get down to it, ain't nothing but good music or bad music. And the Allman Brothers was no joke. So rest in peace, Greg Allman. We're back for the second segment of the show. And as you can see, Noreen, this is all about laying out how do we plug in, how do we fit in. And we were just having a conversation off camera, and you were saying, $3 million? What? Get out of here.
Yeah,
you know?
It's amazing to me because we don't, as you said, we don't connect long distance. $3 million is not a lot of money to raise, to renovate a center. Mm-hmm. It's just
especially in a densely populated
absolutely
area.
It's just not a lot of money to raise. And so that's something that can be done with the resources that we have. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, and it should be.
So what's interesting about this conversation in this show, the series itself, is that enough of these conversations have not been happening, and instead of complaining about it, that's been, you know, my contribution is to say, hey, y'all, look over here at what people are actually doing, not proposing to do, but actually doing. Right down the street here from where we are on Crenshaw Boulevard, the Maverick Flats is for sale. Mm-hmm. That's a historic location for those of you that are not familiar with Los Angeles. Maverick Flats was where it was back in the late 60s and early 70s. It was partially owned by Jim Brown and a lot of artists that we all have become familiar with, like Earth, Wind & Fire, The Temptations, Bill Withers, Richard Pryor. It was the place to be. And it became a magnet from all over the city. If you really wanted to see the finest in entertainment, you came to Maverick Flats. The brother who owns the building now, Seth Cartwright, who owns the Corp, he's, you know, so it ain't just Memphis. It can happen even here in Los Angeles where people don't gather around something that would flourish, because whoever ends up owning Maverick Flats will have a jewel because of the railway coming down through here all the way to the airport. It's happening all over the country, and the sooner we recognize that nobody's coming for us, the better.
Absolutely. We have got to generate our own economy. We have got to spend money in our own communities. We've got to shore up black businesses. We have to invest in each other. Mm-hmm. We can no longer continue to think that the only way we can be successful is with other communities. We've got to invest in our own people. And it starts with education. It starts with educating our children, not allowing them to be raised by television and video games and those kinds of things. We have to cause them to think, use their brain, read books. A lot of information hidden in books that was the key to why Concerned Citizens was successful, is because we had to read everything. My mother didn't hire consultants to do the job. We had to do it ourselves.
So when you speak of education, it's such a broad and vast term. How do we whittle that down to something practical and usable? In other words, the charter school situation, it is what it is. Should we look at ownership of education just as we do everything else?
What we can do are simple things like just teaching our kids at home how to read. Something that's simple.
That's scary that we got to do that, because we fought so hard.
And it's very true. But we are where we are, right? So when my son was in first grade, I could not really afford, but I sacrificed to buy Hooked on Phonics. And I traveled long distances to work. I traveled 45 miles one way to work and 45 miles back. But I always made time at night to make sure that he could learn to read. So we did the Hooked on Phonics so that he could read. You can even learn math if you can read. because the instructions are in the book.
Right. In English.
In English. Right there telling you this is how this works.
Yeah.
And if you really want it bad enough, you can figure it out. So we need basic understanding. Our children are being, if they can look at our kids in the 3rd grade at 8 years old to determine how many prisons to build, certainly if we teach them to read by the age of 8, we can prevent that.
You know, it sounds almost unbelievable, but I know that you're telling the truth because a brother told me, and I've adopted that phrase, show me a man that can't read, and I'll show you a man that don't know nothing. And I thought about that for a while, and then I look at people in terms of just going through the city and traveling and meeting people. You can tell when somebody is comfortable in their own understanding. And when they're not, it's a problem.
Yes.
Especially if you push something in front of them and tell them to read it. Oh, man, I ain't got time to be reading that. No, you can't read that.
Right.
And you should not let that get in your way, because everywhere you go, it's going to come back to haunt you, that you don't have that fundamental capability of reading.
It absolutely does. When you consider that they passed laws that said we must send our children to them to be educated, but the middle school around the corner from me has performed under grade level for 40 years, Bobby. 40 years. They have not had students proficient at reading or math in 40 years. But if you don't send your children there, they're going to send the truant officers to get you and lock you up.
For that average daily attendance.
Average daily attendance, it's all about the dollar. So you are by law required to send your children to them, but they're not required to educate them.
Right.
And so this is why I say we need to take it upon ourselves for the basics. People can learn almost anything once they have basic reading and arithmetic under their belt.
Well, you know, and that's a great segue. I was at the Fernando Pullum Performing Arts Academy right across the street. Friday night, they had a recital, right? They have joint ventured with the Marcus Garvey School. And one of the things that people hesitated about sending their kids to Garvey School over the years was it was so academically intense. And Sister Linda Saunders, who is now the director, she has addressed that by, creating that interface with the arts community. And it's a beautiful thing to see these young kids already academically on point be able to explore all of these other possibilities in terms of music appreciation and music proficiency. And it's heartwarming to see them perform at the level that they're performing, because they got some young cats over there. There's Adonijah's son is playing 4 instruments. He plays keyboard, saxophone, drums, and guitar.
Wonderful.
He's 10 years old.
Wonderful.
And the future is very, very bright for him and all of those kids, because the place was packed. So don't tell me we can't do this.
Well, if you think about it, those things that you mentioned are creative. They cause a person to have to go within themselves and use their brain to create. It's one of the reasons why those were some of the first things removed from schools. Arts, the first thing to go. First thing they took out. Oh, wait a minute. They may not be interested in these other subjects, but they're interested in this.
And in order to do that, they got to learn how to read.
They got to learn how to read.
Exactly.
And so they remove that. And then you're in a situation where there's no real interest. And prior to my son going to school, I was raised to believe that the teachers were right. Well, I had experiences with him in not public schools, but private schools where teachers lied. So I had to make an adjustment and listen more carefully to what he was saying, and found out, the hard way that there are people, as society has gone to the dogs, so have some teachers, and there are some great teachers, and then they're put in these terrible positions, and we pay them less than we pay a professional athlete, and it shows you the value what the country values: entertainment and money. And the teachers ought to be paid more than the entertainers.
Well, what's interesting about where we are right now, and that is a factual statement that you just made, sports and entertainment should be to the African American community what the Mercedes-Benz is to Germans. their stock in trade.
Absolutely.
That's where our money is. If we ever connect the business component to that, it would allow us to build an economy around that would change dramatically our overall condition, as opposed to just cheering for LeBron and whoever else that we happen to like from a sports standpoint, or going to see Drake or whoever. We actually seize the means of production.
Absolutely.
Then we actually live off of that as a collective, because there's so many things that are tied to that. In a couple of weeks in Columbia, South Carolina, the National Association of Minority Contractors is hosting their 48th annual conference. And one of the segments of that is the business of sports and entertainment. Just like the project that you just completed, we're looking at all of the models of possibility, and then what were the best practices. Because you were telling us a couple of weeks ago when you came on the show that you have a job readiness training program, and it's been difficult to really get the community engaged in that. And it's the same process. Whatever it takes to break that cycle,
yes,
that's what we have to be about.
Yes. Because
the same kids that won't attend that are the same kids that still got to eat.
Absolutely.
And if you don't work, you're going to steal.
Right.
There's just no other way to get around. I mean, at some point, Big Mama and them going to die off, and you have no employable skill. You can't even keep the house if they give it to you.
That's right. And that's what has happened to a lot of our ownership, is that it has been lost because the youth were not prepared to handle the business. Mm-hmm. Big Mama and them babied those kids. They babied them children. They didn't teach them the finances and all of what she had to do and how many floors she had to scrub per day to make enough money to take care of that household. Mm-hmm. They didn't teach that part. We don't often want our children to have to struggle or suffer. Well, that's a nice concept. But for people who have been nothing but struggling in this country, you better learn how to do that. I'd rather you have it and not need that skill than to need it and not to have it.
Amen to that. And then I can't just put it on the sisters. We dropped the ball, myself included, and I've spent the last several years remorseful about not doing the kind of things that I should have done in terms of contributing to my own household. Mm-hmm. and being engaged in my own son's life to that extent, and can't unring that bell. But what I do now is try to be as engaged as I can in other people's children's lives, and to do as much as I can to be a part of the solution as opposed to a part of the problem. And the brothers, we got to be more engaged, at every level. And that doesn't mean all the times financially, because sometimes just the presence of a man makes a tremendous difference in a household, in a community, and in a city.
Let me share this with you. My son didn't care whether his father had a quarter in his pocket. All he wanted was his presence. That's all he wanted. If there's anything that men listening to me hear, you do not need money to be a father to your children. They need your presence. They need, even if it's just sitting in a room silent, they need it. They crave it. They need to know the example, simple things. How do you go to the bathroom? How do you shave, Dad? Do you read books? Oh, Daddy reads. Maybe it's cool for me to read. As opposed to listening to the music industry that's telling them about Molly and Percocet. Okay? Men just need to be there. And let me say this to the females. Do not keep your children's father away from your children unless he is harming them. Do not use them as a pawn. We cannot afford it as a people. The boys, listen, my son had, and knew my brother Eugene.
Yes.
My brother Eugene, great man. Followed by my brother Mark, great man. Yeah. My cousin Tony, great man, great father. He had great teachers, great football coaches, but he wanted his father. He had all the examples in the world, but he still had low self-esteem because his father wasn't there. So there's a void left in a young boy when his father's not there. It makes him wonder, am I good enough? And my son is almost 33 years old, and he's still fighting that underlying question, even though he has reconciled with his dad. He's had great success in his life. He's, an actor. He's living out his dream. He just got married, but he still has to fight that because it was there when he was a kid.
That is so relevant to me at 62 years old, because my dad died in a car accident in 1960, and it took me almost 50 years to sort out how to reconcile and deal with being Bobby Glanton-Smith, because Glanton was my father, and he did not marry my mom. And so that struggle is a part of my challenge in terms of, first of all, accepting that we all accidents of birth. Mm-hmm. And then at some point you got to know, look, could have been anybody's child, but that's who you are. Bobby Glanton-Smith, for better or worse. Now, figure out what pieces of it you're going to use for the betterment of yourself and the people that you care about. We now have on the phone, and I got a suspicion that the reason he was unable to come on the phone till right now, he's in Cleveland, Ohio, and we talked earlier today, and he told me that there was a lot of, just challenging things going on in Cleveland. Hey, James Box.
Hey, what's up, Bob?
Welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. I'm on the microphone today with Noreen Mc Clendon, and she's the kind of sister, man, that would be shoulder to shoulder with you, because you probably just came out of the street long enough to give me a couple minutes of your time, man. Real quickly, y'all, this brother has worked with Jim Brown in Cleveland most of his adult life. He has his own accomplishments outside of his association with American. So kind of just as we talk about saving our cities, man, plug us into what's happening with you in Cleveland right now.
Okay, well, right now I'm at University Hospital here in Cleveland. At about 4 o'clock today, I was contacted by homicide because the district I work in with the police squad, I work directly with them, because a lot of times when homicides come up, they'll call me and see if I know somebody. And they called me, and the person that got murdered was my cousin. Today, I just identifying this body. That's why when you were calling, I couldn't answer the phone.
I figured something was wrong, man. Something was wrong.
Yeah. So Memorial Day, this weekend, we had 33 people OD from heroin and die. And
hold on. Whoa, slow down. Did you say 33 people died this past weekend from
Memorial Day weekend from
drug overdose?
Oh
my goodness! And how many homicides?
We had 3 homicides. We had 2 young girls get gunned down with AK-47 sitting in a Dodge Avenger. We had a 40-year-old man in the back with his family. A young person walked back there and blew his head off. He died in his daughter's arms. And then we was at the hospital last night with 3 individuals that had gunshot wounds. 1 young girl to the face, 1 young man to the chest and stomach, and another young man had his knee blew off. So, my channel continues here. It's 24/7 for us. We don't stop. We don't quit. We don't fear nothing. You had a gun battle right before we got here. We don't know what it was in relationship, but over 1,000 rounds was shot between some individuals chasing each other in cars and shooting. So we right in the thick of it, As soon as we leave the hospital, we'll be right back out there, because we're going to figure out what happened to my cousin, because this is unacceptable. We don't condone black men killing black men, you know what I'm saying? And one of the things that me and Jim always talk about that hurts it to his heart when black men take each other's lives. So we trying to give them something in order to have a better quality of life with this American curriculum, so they can, learn the responsibility of self-determination through the life management skills that we teach. So, we maintaining our composure and keeping our head, you know what I'm saying, because we know how to eliminate the negative, establish the facts, and choose our best option. So we're not going to get in no retaliatory mindset. And that's what we're telling the people here not to get into. You know what I'm saying? But we also advocate for the faith-based community to step up, the sleeping giant in this country, to step up. The church with the power, they scream hallelujah, raise their hands, speak in tongues, but when they get outside the church, they pop their locks when they do it like they ride into a gang territory. So no, the Bible said that the wicked flee with no man pursue, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. We need to be manifesting that, not talking about it, but doing it.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. In September, I'm going to be teaching a class, my crew, we're going to be teaching a class at a Bible college to teach the church how to receive people coming home from incarceration because they close the doors to the church. You can only go in through the back door. They don't want just anybody in the church. Well, they have the power. And one of the reasons that a lot of intervention type programs don't work is because they don't deal with the whole person. We're a spirit, soul, and body. And we often don't want to deal with all three of the elements of who we are, which is why it's hit and miss. It's easy for me to take a person's life if I don't see the value of my own life. Those people that killed your cousin don't realize that was a king. They don't understand that. They don't see the royalty that we are. We have been taught that we were nothing. They tried to erase our history, and so we don't value ourselves. There's no way in the world I can kill you if I understand that I'm killing royalty.
But you know what, sister, if I could just interject something real quick, and what you said, I concur with you 110%. But you know what the biggest issue is? These Negroes that's you and my age, that come from you and my era, that have this elevated knowledge and understanding, but refuse to feed it to the young people.
Absolutely.
See, the problem with the church and so-called community activists and black leaders is they don't know how to establish relationships with these young people. We judge them and we call them this and that, but this is a generation of fragmented youth. This is a generation of crack babies that are manifesting into adulthood. You know, when the woman was strung out on crack, she left her baby in the house.
That's right.
And gave her a bottle of spoiled milk or some Kool-Aid, and that him or her cried and cried and cried until they couldn't cry no more.
That's right.
So they became hardened.
So what would they respect?
You dealing with that product. This is what we're dealing with right now. They don't got no love for nothing because nobody had no love for them. So in order to be able to deal with them, we have to overcome our illusions of difference that exist within ourselves. We need a checker from our neck up to get rid of our stinking thinking. We can't judge them and point fingers.
That's right.
We got to go out and redevelop relationships. We need to be praying for a spirit of restoration and reconciliation among the fathers and their sons.
Yes.
That's what needs to be. That's where the intercessors need to step up and take their part. Okay, then the rest of us, we got to get out. We got to quit being scared. We can't just go out on Monday and Tuesday in the afternoon. We got to go out at 2 and 3 in the morning
when it's really going down.
Get out there and get jiggy with them. You see what I'm saying? That's what we do. We out here at night with them 24/7. We bar none. We've been to Chicago like this and LA, so you know it can be done. But the body of Christ got to step up.
Yes.
One thing that Jim, who I call my father, told me in his last visit to Cleveland, that one of the other components of America is the spiritual aspect, because we can teach them the responsibility of self-determination and life management skills, but at the end of the day, they got to be connected to something that they can trust in, that they feel will never let them down. So if they've not been properly introduced to God,
that's right.
I ain't talking about that white 1960 version of a hippie hanging up on the cross, because that's not him. I'm talking about in the Paleo-Hebrew, I'm talking about Yahushua HaMashiach.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about teaching young people. See, the Bible says in the last day they'll be wiser but weak. See, one thing, if you want to teach somebody something, especially a young person, teach them the origin of how the Bible came into existence.
Yes.
Don't teach them biblical stories, because they can't identify with Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, so on and so forth, etc. Let them identify with the Jesus in you, or the Yahuwah in you, or the Yahushua HaMashiach in you. You get what I'm saying? And then, because when Jesus, for lack of a better word, because other people don't understand what I'm talking about, he met their humanity.
Yes.
He dealt with their their human needs and issues, and then they followed him. That's all we got to do. It's not take no rocket science. We can shut down violence in America, because I'm going to say this last thing because I don't want to take up all the time. I got mad at a guy here that preaches for TDJ. His name is Bishop Blackwell. And one day he said, man, I want to have a knockdown, drag-out conversation with you. He said, what's your problem? He said, I see you unchurched. Like, yeah, I said, I'm going to stay unchurched. But let me tell you something. I got a problem with your boy, T.D. Jakes. Every year he had this Manpower Summit. He had 500 to 400,000 people attending this thing. I said, what he needs to do is take 150 to 200,000 of those men and go into the roughest part of Atlanta and evangelize it. That would have a reverberating effect all over America, because everybody's trying to emulate him and be like him. We could do something so powerful. Unfortunately, Bishop Eddie Long was one that did that, but then he got caught up. See, the devil attacked the strength among our men and hit them in the areas where they're weak, so they can't be effective. And then even us, we beat them down until they die. We got to stop that. We got to stop letting other people define us and tell us about ourselves we got to talk about who we are and where we come from and why we do what we do, and break that power of the spirit of fragmentation, which comes through ungodly soul ties from one generation to the next. See, y'all about to take me to a place I ain't trying to go right now. You know what I'm saying? Because it's going to take more than however your time your show got.
Oh, man.
Right about that.
Thing, you know what I'm saying? But the reality of it is, we need to come together on a globalization level among African American men and women, because we got to put our families back together.
Yes. Bobby
That's
was
what we have
right.
to do.
Bobby was right. If I was in Cleveland, we'd be shoulder to shoulder, soldier. You better hurry up and know. I'm lacing up my boots over here, fooling with you. I'm lacing them up. I got my Bible and everything else, and I'm laced up. I'm ready because I'm out here with you. I 100% agree with everything you just said.
Hey, Box. See, she done been down with American a long time, man. Ask Rockhead Johnson about Noreen, man. She's no joke, man.
I feel her spirit.
And her brother and Jim, before he passed away, God rest his soul, Eugene, he was about to, really link arms with us on some stuff, and he regrettably passed away. And as we close out the show tonight, Box, I want people to know that the brother on the other end of this phone is not only the real deal, he's the only deal.
Hallelujah.
In the following way. I've known this brother for many years, and when I've traveled to Cleveland with Jim, the first call he always makes is James Box. Because, like he said, he's like a son to Jim. And there's many of us around the country that have that kind of relationship with Jim, And this brother here is rock solid with it. He's doing some incredible work. We're looking at a couple of projects right now in Cleveland from the construction side of the thing to try to, just create some more alternative opportunities for folk. And this brother is the epicenter of what we're doing there. I want to thank you, Box. I'm going to have you back on, man, and we're going to talk more extensively about what we're doing other than the stuff that you had to do this evening, regrettably, man. And be careful out there, brother. And
prayers to your family.
My goodness, man. I knew it was a reason why you wasn't there at the top of the hour, man. And the irony is, we had talked earlier this morning, and he was dealing with the other killings. I was aware of that. And then before he could come on the show, he is down there, where he's at right now, because we're in a challenging time right now, man. But my spirit and my heart and my prayers are with you, brother. And I'll be talking with you later on, Box.
Okay.
Be well. Peace.
All right, bless you. Hey, send me that sister's information so I can correspond with her, and so I can support what she's doing.
Okay, no doubt about it, brother.
Indeed.
No doubt about it.
Looking forward to
it.
Yeah.
All right, bless you.
So, as we close out the show tonight, in the last couple of minutes, this is a very just having to absorb that. And, we get so numb to this, but sometimes it gets personal.
Yes, indeed.
And then you realize how serious this is and how we have reached a point of urgency where we can't push it under the table any longer.
Not another second. Not another second.
We got to deal with this. And as I close the show tonight, it'll be in the memory of two people that inspired me from the grave. One, he was my cousin and my inspiration. I wrote about him in my book, Real Men Don't Play. His name was George D. Osborne, and the chapter in my book, I entitled it Buffalo Soldier, because he lost his life in Vietnam on October the 4th, 1968, at the age of 20 years old. And before he got out of here, he showed me what a man was when he was 12 years old. That brother, man, he went through hell because he had to grow up by himself. And we were his father and my mother were brothers and sisters. And I watched this brother never complain about anything that he had to do. He learned how to take care of himself from the time he was about 8 years old, literally. Mm-hmm. Shining shoes, running bootleg for the cats in the alley, whatever it took. But he always looked like sunshine. Mm-hmm. And then when he lost his life in Vietnam, it just... I said, man, I got to do something before I get out of here to let people know what a man is like before he even has a chance to be a man.
Yeah.
So tonight's show is in honor of Sergeant George D. Osborne. And the other gentleman that I'm dedicating tonight's show to is Jerry Orlando Anderson, who died on May the 27th, 1989 in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. He saved 2 kids that he didn't even know from drowning. 5 years to the day So in other words, in 1984, that man right there, Scoop Mile Anderson, saved 2 white kids from drowning that he did not know and lost his life. 5 years before that, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, there was a historic flood, and he saved 3 people from dying. I met a guy a few weeks ago here in L.A. whose sister was one of the people he saved.
Oh my gosh.
He died 5 years to the day.
Oh my gosh.
Barry Switzer, who was the coach of the Dallas Cowboys in Oklahoma. Jerry played for him in Oklahoma for the Sooners. Barry Switzer is the hardest hitting defensive back he ever coached. But more importantly, one of the greatest people you would ever possibly want to know. So tonight's show was dedicated to Jerry Anderson and my cousin George D. I want to thank you for coming and sitting in tonight and lighting up the room. And it's not just a show. We're going to put this work in, you
Indeed.
know. And so I salute you. I'm
Thank you for having
inspired
me.
by you. And as we close out, y'all know how I get out. Thank you for letting me be myself. We'll see you next week.